Greetings, fellow travelers, and welcome to the Way of the Showman, where we view the world through the lens of showmanship. I am your gracious host, Captain Frodo, and yet again, the fool has planned to do something, and the world laughs, which when you are a fool or a professional clown is a good result. Today was supposed to be the last episode, but what is going to be the last episode, it's still in development. So, you get this bonus episode, yet again. And the emotions have been flying high a little bit lately. I don't know why. Things just go up and down. It's like we're on a ship or a roller coaster. The pandemic is quite calm here in Norway. We're a bit disconnected from it, so in this strange normalcy, you get this false sense of, I should be doing something, should be doing some shows. But across Europe, across the world, the pandemic is flaring up again. The only place where it seems to have fully gone down is in Victoria in Australia, in Melbourne, which has had, I think, the most severe and persistent lockdown restraints or whatever since this started. But they have gone, and they were sort of at a similar level of having it's like a month or 6 weeks ago or whatever. Whenever they started, they had 700-800 cases a day, and so did France, and so did other countries. And now France, I just saw that had like 25,000 cases in a day, and these last few days Melbourne has had 0. So France has gone up and up and up, and they're losing control. Melbourne has victoriously everyone has stayed in with lockdowns and with what is called curfews. People can't go out, you can't go more than a few kilometers. Now a lot of these things have been lifted, and I'm sure there are widespread cheering and dancing in the streets. I certainly hope so. And a friend of mine said, things have changed in Germany too, so venues that thought they could open and venues that had organized to be in huge ballrooms. My friend Menno, who has an incredible juggling act, tango juggling act with his wife, Emily, they were supposed to do a show at the Tiki Palace, and they had changed their venue that normally holds just, whatever it is, 140 people or something, and they were going to do it in a big ballroom instead and have 200 people, which is what was allowed. And then the rules changed. Now there's no way you can do a show at all, because you can't have 200 people in a room regardless of what distancing or so they have inside the house. So contracts are being cancelled left, right and centre. We are in this for the long haul. Our industry is still very hard hit. But as long as we're okay, that's a very good thing. And in this loneliness, I've been listening to podcasts, and I've been really enjoying the object episodes that Jay Gilligan and Eric Orberg has been doing, where they are on the quest for a definition of juggling. And this last episode that they did was just brilliant. It's to define what juggling is, you'd think it was a straightforward thing, but as these ongoing episodes reveals, it's a very complicated affair. And it's really complicated, an interesting topic of exploration, and this last episode has taken us through circus history, and from the juggling Egyptians 4,000 years ago, and how this then is intertwined like two snakes, one snake being the depiction of juggling and the juggling as an entity in the world, and the other one is the evolution of the activity that a performer does when someone says they're juggling. And if you're not already checking out Jay and Eric's podcast, Object Episodes, you should be. It's awesome. In that episode, they were talking about, in the beginning, juggling is intertwined with magic, so it's one thing. And for me here on the way of the way of the showman, this is, I think, the original state of many things. They start out as being a quite wide, like showmanship is a wide term deliberately, because I wanted to include juggling. I wanted to include all the circus arts, and I wanted to include talking and stand-up comedy and all these things in the beginning. They weren't quite separated out. So somebody who was a juggler did a bit of juggling, a bit of magic, maybe sung a song, and so forth. But anyway, within there, in the talk of these two things next to each other, it made me think of this, how we've talked about before several times, but mainly in the Secret Knowledge and Me episode. Is that episode 3? Anyway, where magic is divided into two things. There is the magic effect, which is what the audience sees, and then there's the method, which is what the magician does to create the effect. And so there's this sort of gap between what the showman who performs the magic does and what the audience experiences. And in a sense, magic is a bit like acting. I mean, Robert Houdin, the father of modern magic, said that a magician is an actor who plays the role of a magician. So, with that in mind, magic is a kind of acting. And another way that it is like acting is that when you're really good at magic, it looks like you're not really doing anything. Like if you go, let me show you something weird. When you take this steel ring, which can you see, it's a solid steel ring, and then when you push it against this other ring, it just links into it. Now, if you're a casual person and you just did that, and you actually had discovered this weird phenomena that happened that surprised you and blew you away, then that, if it's delivered perfectly, this is what it looks like to an audience member when the magician is highly skilled. An impossibility happens and it looks completely fair and honestly presented, like one person just showing somebody else something strange. The skill of the magician is then completely invisible. You think you saw one thing, but something else went on. Anyways, in the episode, Eric and Jay is talking about how a juggler is very different than a magician, because the skill of the juggler, his method for the effect, like his skill on how to juggle a 5-ball cascade or juggle 3 clubs, 3 knives, the method, or like his skill, is the very object of attraction for the audience. The juggler shows you the 5 rings, then he juggles them, and you just know it's hard, and the fact that it is hard, but that he can still do it, is what is attention grabbing and pleasing to see. So I just thought this was a kind of interesting dichotomy, the hidden skill of the magician and the very visible skill, where there's almost this sort of duality there, or that they are on a spectrum. And with juggling, straightforward. What you see is what you get. And back in the end of the 90s and in the early 2000s, I did a show together with Tagalil, the space cowboy, and Shep Huntley, called The Happy Sideshow, and that was one of the catchphrases, this, what you see is what you get. It was one of the catchphrases that we used. Shep Huntley, who was the MC of the show, would say this all the time at the end of a routine. Here at The Happy Sideshow, what you see is what you get. And then we would do something crazy, swallowing swords and lying on beds and nails and lifting weights with our piercings and all that stuff, squeezing through rackets. But every now and then, when he said that, we would do it and then he would say, what you see is what you get, and then we would do something impossible, like totally impossible, because what we did wasn't juggling. we presented it like juggling, maybe not with the skill, maybe we were gonna, lift a weight, and it looked very heavy, and maybe it wasn't quite as heavy as it was. So, in a sense, what the audience saw was not juggling; it was actually magic. And there's a kind of tradition in sideshow, and that tradition, or this flavor, it's flavored with subterfuge. It was actually magic. But as a showman, we as a group were so good at that magic that all the audience saw was the effect. When somebody already knows how to swallow a sword, when somebody already has shown you that they can do all these dislocations, the fact that there's a terrible cracking sound when somebody holds a microphone up to it, you never consider that this could be added to it. It could be another dimension that isn't quite real because you've already led them up to the point. And this kind of flavor of invisible skill, the magic woven into it, is a really interesting arena for us showfolk to delve into. When you already can do impossible things, what's that other impossible thing that just tips it over the edge completely into the impossible? In the sideshow world, this is kind of called grifts or scams, or I don't know, it's just little. Anyway, a bit of magic goes a long way to blow people's minds, particularly when they don't know that they're watching magic. And this is, I guess, where a whole lot of scams, religious or healing or other types of scams that are going on out there. Anyway, I was just listening to these guys talk about magic and juggling, and was just struck by this kind of spectrum of magician on one side and juggler on another, and then us doing the sideshow stuff somewhere there in the middle, where I guess you are just doing the two things, but you're getting a different kind of result for the audience. But as I said, emotions have been going up and down. It's been a very long time since the shows closed down in Las Vegas, and we went from doing 10 shows a week to doing no shows a week. And I am not whole. At the moment, I am not whole. Part of me is gone. I am a showman. And a showman is someone who faces the other way, standing face to face with others, with something to show them. Who I am is dependent on others, groups of others gathering in anticipation and attention. And in this meeting appears the show on the frontier between me and the audience. This is where the show emanates or comes out. In this meeting of the two, the shower and the watcher, this is the realm of the show. And without this meeting point of attention, the time shared, there is no show. And I am a showman. I consist of two aspects, show and man. The man I am lives in the show, belongs in the show, calls the show home. I left Norway in 1996 when I began the life on the road, when I began following the way of the showman. I didn't know it when I went with a friend on a car trip through Europe doing street shows, living in a Fiat Uno, which is a tiny car. I didn't know that I would be gone for 24 years. Before that, too, I lived a sojourn existence. I was going away in every holiday on trips, traveling with my dad, and later on traveling through Europe and stuff by myself or with friends in every school holiday. And I left straight after school. I moved to Oslo to study but also to be with other jugglers and circus people. My home was already then on the road, and I developed a deep feeling of belonging, because to a third space, the space that I mentioned before, the performance space, the place where a showman and the audience join in a very particular conversation which opens up a uniquely human realm, the show space, not just my space, not just the audience's space, but in this meeting, the conversation itself between us, of speaking, showing, and the listening, it creates this extra dimension. And on all my travels through Europe in the 90s, or in Australia or whatever, I've been hanging out with people and everything, but I've been going back to this place all the time. Whether we did street shows, or we did indoor shows, or we were talking about shows, or creating new routines that we wanted to do in shows, this place has been integral to myself, and it's been the place that I've visited. I've always had this feeling when we toured around with La Clique in the beginning, and we toured in the famous Spiegel tent. The tent would move from town to town, and we would go outside, and all of a sudden I'd be in Hyde Park in Sydney, and then the next time I looked out I'd be in George Square Garden in Edinburgh, and the inside would be the same and the outside would be totally different. And so the tent was kind of the home, but my specific home in that tent was inside the show, and I belonged there. And I've been around so many streets, and I've slept in parks and vans and in motels and hotels and on planes, and traveled every mode of transport to get to gigs, but always in a certain sense it's to go home, to arrive at this effervescent place, the space between, the middle ground, the midway between myself and the audience. This place is now largely gone. There are remnants, but frankly it feels like the remnants of the old world rather than the start of the new. It's like the KT boundary, makes me think of, because I love dinosaurs, at the KT, or the Cretaceous Tertiary boundary, which is the two geological times. Actually, they actually call that now the Cretaceous Paleogene boundary. It's the boundary that Alvarez found sometime, was that in the 80s, that he found that dark band of ash at about 67 million years ago, colored rock, that signifies the end of an era, the 200 million year reign of the dinosaurs after the asteroid smashed into it. Not all the dinosaurs died. Just like now, not all the shows are gone. But we are still struggling. There's been a major event and we are still adapting, just like here and there, back in 67 million years ago, after the asteroid has fallen down, where the asteroid hit the Earth so hard. I always find that interesting. It's hit the Earth so hard that when you hit the Earth hard, dirt flies upwards, and some of that dirt that flew upwards, it went all the way up to the edge of the atmosphere, and some of it actually escaped and just fell up into space. I find that really incredible. And then of course what was caught by the gravity then came raining down like stones of fire, setting the whole world alight. But anyway, regardless of this incredible devastation, here and there, no doubt there was a velociraptor or something, some little squeaky little animal, microraptor coming out somewhere, still alive, but actually it's gone past its peak. The dinosaurs were gone. the little velociraptors trying to chase some pesky little mammalian rodent jumping back into the holes. They didn't know it at the time, but they'd been ruling the world for 200 million years, and now it was those little mammals that was going to come out. We haven't quite found the form of what will come after this yet. But putting that aside, this special home, my special home, the home as a showman, which is our special home, the one that we all seek and the one that we're all now missing, the one that we travel halfway around the world to get to, and what a thrill that is. Get off a plane and be picked up by a limo, or arrive at a huge festival, get in front of a massive crowd, a huge audience, and also I remember for the Mullumbimby Circus Festival in Australia, northern New South Wales, I was doing a magic show in a little tent called a Tiny Top, beautiful little canvas tent, maybe 40 seats, 50 seats at the most. And the sun was just going down, and I'd finished my show. It's like a short, sharp show, 15 minutes or so. But as I'd finished and the people were leaving and I was packing up, a kid comes or pushes the door, like the canvas door. It's just a slit really, but he pushed it open and stuck his head in with his mum. And as I turn around halfway through packing up my stuff and resetting my magic props, I turn around just in time to see his face, and maybe he was like 9 years old, and I see that he realizes that he has missed the show, and this was the last show of the day, and I very quickly can see that they have been running, and his mother is like out of breath, and the front of house girl who I was working with, she says, "Oh no, sorry guys, you just missed it, it's too late." And I'm like, make this split second decision. I put on my shiny red turban with a little animal skull on the front and a big white feather, and then with a great big show voice I went, it's like, "Don't be silly. This guy, he's just in time." And I'm going over and I'm going like, "I was waiting for you. I didn't see you in the audience, and I was wondering, where are you?" And the kid looks a little bit confused, and I give them both a big smile, and I go, "I saved the best seats and the most magical things that I have to show for just now. I saved it just for you." And then I invited a boy, and they came, him and his mom sat there in the front row, and I did my whole show one more time, just for him and his mom. It was only a 15-minute show, but that's the beauty of this other home. This kid came in and he wanted to go to that space, He wanted to go there, and I could, because everything was set up, I could invite him home. And it's a special home that I know so well. And because I know it so well, that's part of this radiance of a master showman, that you have internalized this place. So as soon as you turn on and start projecting yourself out, you invite them in and make the audience feel at home as well. Like when you invite somebody into your house and you really go, "My castle is your castle, or my place is your place. Anything can happen in here. Just relax. This is a good place." And for those 15 minutes when the kid got to see the show that he for a moment thought that he missed, after running through a darkening field to a tiny colorful canvas tent that smelled of popcorn, I got to go home again, and him and his mom, they helped open the portal for me. And now that I think back at that, I'm like, oh, of course I should have done it. It's anything to get back to that show home for a while. Because at the time, though, it could have gone either way, because there's a festival, been doing workshops and doing stuff all day, helping people with their acts, and I was taking other workshops. And somewhere very close by in a bar tent, there was probably a cold beer with my name on it. But now, of course, I can only visit that home in the company of an audience, even when that was just one boy and his mom. So it's a very special place, and all this is a long way to say that a show is, in a very real sense, a home for me and for us showfolk. And I learnt that there is a very special word. It's called Solastalgia. And it was Josh Avner from the Hideaway Circus podcast that pointed me towards this excellent term. And let's see if I can just read a little bit about what it is. Because solastalgia, it's a concept that this guy, an Australian guy called Glenn Albrecht, an Australian philosopher, and he felt that there was a need for a word, because this word solastalgia, it's a little bit related to nostalgia, as you can imagine. But before we go there, he says that the short sort of end of the definition or whatever of what solastalgia is when you have lost your home, but you haven't actually moved. So he writes, I'll just do a little read from an abstract from a paper he wrote. Solastalgia is a new concept developed to give greater meaning and clarity to environmentally induced distress, as opposed to nostalgia, the melancholia or homesickness experienced by individuals when separated from a loved home. As in separated, being the key there. Solastalgia is the distress that is produced by environmental change impacting on people while they are directly connected to their home environment. So it's your home has disappeared whilst you are still there. I mean, he's been developing this idea after seeing the open cut mining in northern parts of Australia, where they're just digging away the entire land, and you're digging away the whole landscape to get at the coal. So they're destroying the earth or the direct landscape to dig out something which is, in a sense, also then hurting the entire earth, our globe and our tiny blue dot in the infinite dark emptiness of space. Our earth is hanging there, and so that's an added thing to it. But this concept of because nostalgia, that's traditionally sort of been defined as a form of homesickness, a melancholia, a depression that people can get from being absent from home, and that they wish to return to. The soldiers during the wars were affected so strongly by this that it ultimately could lead to death, as hopelessness and despair set in, and they get careless and get killed. And as it turned out, sending the soldiers home cured it. Returning home cured nostalgia. Nostalgia was coined back in the 1680s or so. So it was around about the time that Leeuwenhoek peered through his microscope that we talked about last episode. But I find this idea really closely connected when we then have developed the idea of the show being a very real home for us showfolk. Then this idea that the environment has changed, even though he was thinking of it more like a physical environment, so he's thinking of environmental destruction through massive open cut mining where they're cutting into the land and basically just digging it away. So what used to be farmland or beautiful land now is just basically a hole in the ground. But the home that we have lost is a kind of inner space, or a third space, a space between us and the audience. And the environmental change that has come there is also a kind of inner space. It's a disease. It's something that's inside us that can hurt us when we are, if we do come together in groups. So I think this word, solastalgia, this emotional or existential distress that is caused by the environmental change, very real environmental change, and in a biological sense, but it's also then it's very much covers what it is that's going on for us at the moment. I am homesick, but I am still at home. And this home of the show, I found it everywhere. It used to be everywhere where I met people. At the moment, I guess, the only place where this somewhat comes back out again is here, with you. Talking to you, is a way of getting back at it. Because the home that we have all lost, it isn't really a geographical location. Our show home, the midway between ourselves and the audience, is situated in this inner geography, but it's no less real, for that matter. Rather to the contrary, it's a huge part of ourselves. And so in this sense, the geography that's been dug away, the one that's been mined and broken apart for no good reason, that bit that's been dug out, that's part of my soul, part of our soul. And that part of me is gone. I'm not whole. Part of me is gone. I am a showman, and a showman is someone who faces the other way, standing face to face with others, with something to show them. Who I am is dependent on those others, groups of others gathering in anticipation and attention. In this meeting appears the show, or this meeting of the two, the shower and the watcher, is the show. Without this meeting point of attention and time shared, there is no show. I am a showman. I consist of two aspects, the show and the man I am lives in the show, belongs in the show, calls the show home. Yeah, I guess I have a little bit of this solastalgia raging. I hope you are all doing well out there, and I hope you're staying creative, and hope that you're staying positive in all of this. That's really all we have to say today. If you know someone who would benefit from listening to this, grab a hold of them. Next week will be the final episode, as I always say. Next week will be the final episode, but it really will be. I am well on the way of getting that happening, but I thought I'd just share these ideas with you about homesickness for that very special place that we all know and love. So, all that's left to be said now is take care of yourself and those you love, and I hope to see you along the way.